We are back, and we are joined by Indy from IndieNews.Network, and we are joined by Craig Jardula from the Convo Couch and AM Wakeup, and as well, we're joined by Steve Poikonen, who is Craig's co-host on AM Wakeup and also co-host Slow News Day. We're talking about censorship and independent media. As I have long said, we need truth-seeking media now more than ever. It's become incredibly difficult and increasingly difficult to gain a foothold in the independent media space due to a variety of reasons, whether it's the overt censorship that we all can recognize, like being demonetized and be deplatformed, but also the kind of soft censorship that we see through algorithms and the recommendations and all of that stuff. They're really hitting independent media from every angle. And we were just talking a bit about how being viewer funded is kind of the best practice. I agree with that. But I'm also seeing something that has been troubling me for a couple years now in the independent media space. When you do rely on your viewers for your funding, I think once you reach a certain level and you become dependent on that money as it becomes your income, the way that you survive, I think that a lot of people, whether it's conscious or not, start to narrow the scope of the things that they will cover in order to appeal to and appease the broadest base of people. What do you guys think about that? Because I think that we've seen a lot of that happening over the last couple of years. I think that people, once you don't want to make people angry, you don't want to isolate people or alienate people, so you start to really narrow the scope of the topics that you're willing to cover and the way that you will cover them. Is that something that you all have seen as well?
I've witnessed it for sure. I do. I want to say one thing real quick about the value for value system, though.
I'm going to talk about that later, Steve.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Hold on. No, it's just we have, like, with permission as can anyone else, borrowed it, adopted it from the best podcast in the universe, the No Agenda Show, with Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. So it's the model they pioneered. They've encouraged other people to adopt it. A handful of us have, and as just an evangelical. But when it comes to people holding back, of course we've watched this happen. There's people that we know that we're friends with, that have shows on YouTube where they don't intentionally and tell people they don't talk about stuff because they have other platforms where they can. And that's one way to deal with that model. Our friend Jason Burmis has done something that a lot of us adopted too for a while, where you run on YouTube up to a certain point, and then you cut your YouTube stream and you finish your show, and hopefully a number of the audience comes along with you on other platforms where you're allowed to speak more freely. But even if you're trying to keep, I've seen people try to keep an audience that way. I don't know if it works. I don't know if they're losing people who graduate out. I would hope they would lose people who graduate out, and then new people would come in. We're having more different conversations with different people now than we were last year, which is more than we were the year before, which is more than we were the year before. And I hope that continues, because I think that the best way to draw in the broadest spectrum of audience is to be able to have a cogent conversation with anyone from anywhere, no matter what their ideology is or whether or not you agree with them. Because the point is an adult exchange of ideas, not, owning someone or whatever clickbaity nonsense. So yes, I've seen it, but as to whether or not it works, I can't say, because I'm not, I don't know who graduates out, who comes back in, and just who gets locked in that confirmation bias bubble. And there's a lot of people that do that too.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I think that that's kind of the model that keeps people isolated in their echo chamber, because it feels good. You know what I mean? It feels good for somebody to tell you. Go ahead, Indy.
And they find a lane, and they find an audience that again, like you say, confirmation bias, and then they're limiting to certain guests or to certain sources. And if they're not expanding out to make sure that they're actually getting the bigger picture, and that they're not losing the plot and losing the whole story. And I've seen that happen even when it comes to, and I hate to say it, fake third parties, which apparently are a thing that happened in this country in the last few years. that have never run a candidate, that have never put anybody on a ballot, yet tie up a ton of airspace and airtime and conversation and energy that ends up doing what exactly? It's beyond frustrating, and I know that's a little bit derailing for the conversation, but that's the whole point. Is I think that you've got a lot of these people that don't want to talk about things like the fact that this is a distraction from what can we be achieving, mutual aid and direct action and actually fighting the system. And I think that's all part of this stuff, really.
Yeah, for sure. Pasta, what do you think? Because I know that you've been around for a while in this game. And I think that a lot of people that started around the same time as you did with the Convo Couch have gone a very different route, you know?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, everybody around us in this space is, I don't worry about them. I don't pay attention to them as much as I do the powers that be that are controlling who can say what, when they can say it. That to me is the biggest thing, because it always falls back on, why did we start these channels in the first place? I mean, we know each other very well over here. I understand why you and Steve got started and rolling on, what you do. And I think you guys understand why the Convo Couch got rolling, is that we had a responsibility. We thought that we could, shed some light on some situations and talk about things that weren't being talked about. I mean, the work you guys did for Julian was all about the activism of understanding, letting people understand, who Julian Assange is and why we run around the globe over here to these countries, to Steve's favorite place, the global South, and, observe these elections, is because we have a responsibility. And so I think, once again, and you see people who kind of they kind of ease into these safe spots, right? Where they don't talk about things that will get them demonetized, or don't, kind of speak these words. They don't say the words. They have a list of the words of the things they can't say. And what's happening to them? They're losing viewers. They're losing subscribers. They're not moving. They're stagnant. So it will work itself out when we continue to get these numbers. And even if our numbers grow small, in a small pace, through the suppression, through the demonetization, through all the shadow banning, and yet we're still growing. Once those cuffs are taken off, we're going to continue to grow. So right now it's just kind of weathering the storm. And when I weather the storm, I don't pay attention too much to the people who are just going to, say what they're told to say, or what's comfortable to say, or what's safe to say. I look for the people who do kind of go outside that bubble, and then I try to get them involved and try to have a conversation with them. So, no matter what's going on around us, I think the best thing for us to do is have somewhat of a blinders on and keep doing what we're doing, and we'll be successful in the very end.
I think that's great advice. And actually, Scott Horton said something to me very recently that was very similar. I asked him, because I try to ask everybody who is in the independent media space, what can we do to combat this stuff? What can we do to combat the propaganda, the censorship, all of these things that we're facing? And he said, we just have to keep doing the work. If you just keep doing the work, people will recognize it eventually. I think Steve has said something very similar to that before too. If you just keep doing the work, that at some point people will have to recognize it. And for me, I think it's, I very accidentally fell into independent media. I really only started as a way to give a platform to my activism. And that was, the whole point of why I'm here. And so, I think there's a lot of people, especially now, there's a lot of people who are getting into it for the wrong reasons. But Paz, I think that's great advice. We need to just kind of keep our heads down, do the work that we know is important, and just stop worrying about everybody else. And the whole, the kind of debate me bro stuff that's happening right now is really exhausting. I mean, as Steve just said, I don't want to debate people. I'm not interested. I would like to have conversations with people, including people that I disagree with. And what do you guys think about the debate me bro culture? Because I feel like what that does is it sucks a lot of the oxygen out of the room, and is very distracting away from issues that need legitimate coverage and time and attention.
I think that as long as I'm saying, if you're having debates or you're having conversations where somebody can learn something, if you don't bring it, if the debate me bro attitude is that of I just want to defeat my opponent and I want to knock them down as much as I can, and that's the mentality, just so I can, prove myself right and them wrong, then, go scratch, because nobody's learning anything. But if you bring somebody to the table that has a different opinion than you, and you're like, hey, maybe I can understand and learn why they're talking about these things, you're really now you're doing a service to the public, to your fans, to the people out there, to activists, to everyone. So, I mean, that's the way I kind of look at the debate me bro kind of attitude. And I just want to point out too, as well, before I hand it off to my colleagues over here, that also the fact that, I mean, I think it's up to us, right, to be a little clever, to be a little, creative and whatnot. The things that we talk about, the fact that you guys can talk about Julian Assange every single day. I talk about elections, right? They're not the sexiest topics. People don't want to talk about them. They rather hear us talk about invisible handcuffs on AOC. So, I mean, I think a lot of the ball is in our court to be creative and inspiring in ways to talk about other things, but then still direct people to these other issues that are so important. A free and fair, transparent elections, a free and fair press. So I think it's up to us to be creative to get people involved. But I think there's also some reward from a lot of nuanced people out there for us sticking to our guns and talking about the things that are so important nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, Indy?
What do I think? Debate me bros are full of testosterone, and they're bros for the most part. Don't really settle very much of anything, but get themselves a whole bunch of other people that want to somehow tune in to see some type of conflict, and conflict sells. That's where the whole debate me bro culture kind of comes in. They're trying to manufacture conflict. But you know what? There is so much conflict out there that we cover. Talk to Vanessa Beeley about conflict. Talk to Eva Bartlett about conflict. Talk to Fiorella about conflict. Talk to any people who are going out there and actually getting the story. Scott Horton, antiwar.com. I mean, they cover conflict. I mean, this manufactured conflict between podcasters in order to get names into an algorithm, because the names are what actually drive traffic from the It's not what we're about. It's not actually news. And the problem is that news has become entertainment, and the debate me bro culture has seized on that and figured out how to mesh headline stories with WWE entertainment, this standing in the corner and yelling at each other about different things until somebody rage quits. And that's how you win, is by getting somebody to rage quit so they can't even have a conversation with you. That's the victory. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's got it all wrong and reversed. I mean, I thought the victory was you bring them over to your side and you come to an understanding. I thought that was the victory.
And well, it's supposed to be, right? Like you're supposed to be. I mean, if you want to get anything done, you have to be willing to enter into conversations with people that don't already agree with you and convince them that your ideas are good. But that's not the goal with any of this stuff. It's just who can get like the quippiest one-liner. You know what I mean? Like the sound bite that they can pretend as if they destroyed. You'll see that the title of the video will be so and so destroys so and so, and it's like, what is that even? You know what I mean? It's just so stupid. And I know, Steve, you hate the debate me bro culture too.
Yeah, no, I just want to point out the only reason the pasta is rah-rah for it is because he gets invited on these things and he usually wins. And that's the only reason that he's like, oh, no, I don't know. There's a really positive side to these. It's because when he gets invited onto them, he wins. And so that's why.
That's not true, Steve. And I started a show with you, and we don't even have a lot of the same similarities, but I think we learn from each other.
Right, but I'm not inviting you onto a debate show. That's why you lose every day on the show. You're sitting next to me and you have to be there for it. It's a totally different dynamic. That's neither here nor there, though. The debate me bro thing, Indy's nailed a lot of it. Look, if you want to watch two pigs wrestle, and you get close enough to get mud splashed on you, you have a story to then go home and talk about. If you happen to be one of the pigs wrestling, then you get covered in mud and you both enjoy it. So there is there's an upside to it in that aspect. But otherwise, if you want to learn something, if you want to have an actual debate, please do what the Soho Forum does and have two intelligent people with an affirmative and a negative to the question, show up and either defend the affirmative or the negative and let people keep score.
Yeah.
And let people, let the audience that's there determine who the winner was. And then that way, if anybody wants to, be in charge of buying drinks afterwards, you have had a mechanism by which to determine who picks up the tab.
Yes. Legitimate debate I have no problem with, but it's the debate me bro culture thing that I really despise. It's TMZ level nonsense. It's shenanigans. I got no time for it. Okay, we have to take another quick break. Hang tight. We're going to be right back with more right here on TNT Radio.